This story is a really interesting write-up, and it focuses on, common journalistic technique is like you tell one person's story and you use that to kind of extrapolate to a larger trend. That's what this person did here. They talk about Homeland Security is spying on Reddit users. So specifically, there's a Reddit user called Budget Chicken 2425. So this actually happened in January. This is an internal report that was leaked to this reporter, and it talks about how Homeland Security officials in Texas were monitoring this user, who, as far as we know, is not a narco trafficker, a gang member, or a terrorist. The report centers on Budget Chicken's call for a protest near a Border Patrol facility in Edinburgh, Texas. The report acknowledges that anti-ICE protests throughout Texas have been quote-unquote generally lawful, and there's no evidence of any threat posed by this user's call. Any protest whatsoever near the border facility is said to warrant continued monitoring. There's a screenshot here for audio listeners of a Reddit post from this Budget Chicken guy in r/Rio Grande Valley. He says, join me in protest against ICE. He says, in light of today's events, I'm rallying people to support our rights and freedoms, not just for ourselves, but for our neighbors, family, and community. We need volunteers to be witnesses and to spread awareness. The more we are silent, the faster it will come to us. I will be at the intersection of 281 and Trenton by the Border Patrol station around 6. Please come support. That's the whole post. There's a section that gives a sense of the sheer volume of data Homeland Security collects to generate a big picture view of what's going on in the country. One specific priority asks what group or individuals are responsible for or are associated with border violence, and what are the intended impact to Customs and Border Patrol personnel and operations. They say that they are tracking 3 particular social media trends, which is social media-driven mobilization, symbolic targeting of government facilities, and a statewide baseline of mobilization potential. In other words, the government is building a sociological profile of political discontent. The bulletin notes that these protests are perception-driven, meaning they are motivated by general concerns about rights rather than specific incidents. To determine the threat posed by Budget Chicken 2425, analysts didn't just look at the protest call, they scored the user's entire digital footprint. The bulletin notes that Chicken, quote, frequently participates in various community discussions. For example, in r/Texans, they compared the team to the Cleveland Browns. In r/Movies, they discussed the film Almost Famous. r/Stephen King shares his book collection. r/Fuck I'm Old, reminiscing about the 1970s television production logos. Okay, I'll go ahead and say right here that up until this point, I was like, this is really invasive and I'm not condoning it. But I completely understand they need to know what's going on. They need to keep an eye on threats. And just because this dude hasn't said anything doesn't mean he's not going to do anything. So I understand hey, let's just keep an eye out on this. This is the part where they lost me. It is recommended that all agents wear their ballistic armor, utilize long arms, and if possible, work in groups. That sounds a little excessive in response to a dude who said, hey, let's go stand on the corner and chant some slogans. Is it possible he might do something? Absolutely. Should you keep an eye on it? Absolutely. Should you escalate straight to rifles and body armor? I don't know about that. Personal opinions aside, the point here is the social media monitoring. This story is not really unique. It's just recent. In the past, I have talked about stories of government monitoring all kinds of social media networks, and not just the big ones, not just, Facebook and TikTok and Reddit. I mean, there's small niche ones that are built for very specific communities. That's actually what Palantir does. That's their whole claim to fame, is Palantir doesn't actually collect any data. They build the databases that link all the data together. This is all powering the surveillance state. It's a reminder to be careful what you post online. It's a reminder that anything you put in a digital format gets swept up on any platform. Again, it's not just the big stuff like Reddit and Discord. It's the small niche stuff. Anywhere they think something might be happening, they're trying to get a foothold in there. I guarantee it.
I was under the impression that law enforcement, I assume Homeland Security is law enforcement, I guess.
It's technically a type of law enforcement. It's the federal arm of the government. They generally handle border security and that kind of stuff.
I was under the impression that, in most places that we're a free country, a country where people's privacy is respected, that police officers or law enforcement in general wouldn't go poking around and start building a case against someone unless there was a suspicion of a crime. I don't see how organizing a protest is any sort of suspicion for a crime. That everyone is perfectly within their rights to do so. I think that's the number one concerning thing. This is the sort of thing we talk about when we're talking about Russia. They literally went through this person's entire posting history and they didn't even have a suspicion that a crime was going to be committed. You should be free to organize a protest is what I'm trying to say. This is not controversial, I don't think.